Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our full review of the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. The Metaspeed Sky Paris is one of two new super shoes from Asics to launch in 2024 along with the Metaspeed Edge Paris. It costs £220 in the UK and $250 in the US. It has a 5mm drop with a stack height of 39.5mm at the heel and 34.5mm at the forefoot, and it weighs in at just 188 grams or 6.6 ounces in my UK size 9, which is about a 20 gram drop on the Metaspeed Sky Plus and makes it the lightest super shoe I've tested anyway, although we haven't tested the Adidas Pro Evo 1. Big update to the new shoe is the FF Turbo Plus foam, which promises to be lighter, bouncier and softer than the FF Turbo foam used in past Metaspeeds. We've also got a wider carbon plate to try and increase stability, and a new Motion Wrap 2.0 upper, which is lighter than the Motion Wrap material used on the previous versions of the shoe. You still do have a little bit of padding around the Achilles, but in general it's a very breathable, lightweight upper for racing. You have an Asics grip outsole and there's pretty minimal rubber used. There is quite good forefoot coverage, although there are holes dotted all over it to try and reduce the weight. It's quite a thin layer of rubber, I will say that. It doesn't extend all the way back at the heel, so if you are a pronounced heel striker you might get a little bit of scuffing up at the back here. We'll talk more about that in the main review. In general, everything about the shoe has been designed to keep it very lightweight while still giving you the grip and durability in the key impact areas on the outsole. So as mentioned, there is also the Metaspeed Edge Paris. That is a shoe that none of us have had a chance to test yet, so we're just reviewing the Metaspeed Sky Paris as is for now. We will hopefully test the Edge Paris in time. They are designed for two different types of running style, with the Sky Paris being designed for more bounding runners who increase their stride length mainly when running fast. And then the Edge Paris is designed for more shuffling, high cadence runners who increase their cadence further when they run quickly. Both shoes have the same stack height and drop, but with the Edge Paris you get a slightly longer forefoot rocker, and also the plate is a bit more scooped and sits lower in the foam. It sits a bit higher in the foam with the Metaspeed Sky Paris. We'll try and get to some full comparisons between the two shoes in time when we've tested the Edge, but for now it's all about the Sky.
Now in testing, I ran in a UK1.5 in the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris, which is my regular Asics size, and I found that spot on. It's snug and racy enough, the heels hold well for me, there's no slipping or rubbing at the back here, which is important. I got the midfoot lockdown really good, dialed in easily. Has a smidgen of lace pinch over the top, deeper into my runs, but it was nothing crazy. The toe box kind of feels airy, there's lots of clearance across the top of the toes. Lengthwise, I'd say they're okay too, though I did get one bruised toenail after my marathon test. But again, that's not uncommon during marathon. So overall, I'd recommend going true to size in these shoes.
So fit for me has been very good overall, I would say, in the Metaspeed Sky Paris. I've had mine in a UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size. And that is the same size that I've had the Metaspeed Sky and the Metaspeed Sky Plus in as well too. I've run and raced it in both of those shoes. Now, it's obviously it's a racing shoe. It's going to feel a little bit on the narrow side. For me and my narrow feet, generally that kind of works. Now, what I would say is this is definitely, compared to some other racing shoes, less of a challenge to kind of squeeze your foot in. So I think that's a massive kind of positive there for me. I think on the previous two shoes, I think they felt maybe a touch longer, and I think you lose a little bit of that, but I think you gain a little bit more volume in general, particularly up front in the toe box, which I think maybe is welcome for me in terms of, you know, running longer distances in this shoe. I think if you're between kind of sizes, I think maybe there's an argument to go half a size up in the shoe. But for me, my UK size 8, absolutely fine. Elsewhere, midfoot wise, lockdown, kind of hold has been pretty good. Still don't absolutely love these laces that kind of Asics has kind of settled on. And I think, you know, has been times, a couple of occasions where I haven't absolutely nailed the lockdown on the tongue. But once you do, absolutely kind of what you want from a racing shoe. Heel collar, no kind of issues in terms of heel rub, issues in terms of lockdown. So from that point of view, absolutely fine. So yeah, for me, going to size has been fine. I do think maybe if you are between sizes, there may be an argument to go half a size up in this shoe.
Fit has been all good for me in my normal running shoe size. I've got a UK 9 here, which is a US 10. With Asics, I'm always a UK 9, but sometimes in the more cushioned shoes, it can be quite roomy, but you've got a more dialed in fit, I would say, with the Metaspeed Sky Paris. In a good way, it's what you want in a racing shoe. There's still enough room in the toe box. I've gone over 20 miles in the shoe with no problems on comfort, and the fit is also dialed in and secure enough that you can run fast in it. I've done a short 5K on a twisting course and never felt that I had any kind of lateral movement. So yeah, fit was all good for me in my normal running shoe size. No Achilles irritation at all. It's a well-designed shoe all round on the fit, I'd say. So if you follow any of the other videos that have gone up on the channel lately, you will know that I'm a very big fan of the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris, and that's based on a really extensive and very enjoyable run test. I've done 125 kilometers in the shoe now, and that's included a long run of around 20 miles. I've done an all-out park run, I've done a half marathon race, and then several other long progression runs in my marathon training, as well as probably the best track session of my life. So all in all, I've tested it many times, and I've loved it every single time I've gone out and run in this shoe. It's a really impressive all-round super shoe. Basically hits all the highs of what you want from a modern racer. It is unbelievably light. That weight is incredible, given that you've got such a big high stack here, and it is a bouncy, propulsive foam. It's not like they just put in a very lightweight foam that doesn't deliver the goods. It's light, but it's also got that bounce and spring you expect from a super shoe. I've also found that it's held that bounce deep into runs, so the foam is resilient enough that it doesn't compress and start to bottom out at all. Like on long runs, you're still getting that nice springy feeling underfoot, and then it is very nimble and light. Like I say, it's very agile if you're going to do short distance races in it or use it for short reps. It's really got both ends of the scale well covered. It's a really good all distance fast running shoe. On the actual ride, I say the bounce isn't as noticeable and huge as with some shoes like the Hoka Cielo X1 or even the Nike Alphafly 3, but what you do get is a very fast and aggressive transition that I think really moves you through your foot strike well, and then still gives you, like I say, a fair bit of bounce and propulsion. So it just feels like you're really turning over very quickly in this shoe while still getting a nice amount of spring. The stiffness from the plate I think is quite noticeable in a good way. Like you get good punch off your toes and it doesn't get harsh at all. Like I say, I've gone to 20 miles in the shoe, no feelings of discomfort at all. I think it's really well balanced all round to just keep delivering that punchy, propulsive ride that also aids a high turnover and keeps you going deep into hard runs and races. So the longest run I did in it was a session where I was doing a progression 30k, and then did a couple of k cool down to hit that kind of 20-mile mark, and I did the last 10k of that at my goal marathon pace of 3:30 per kilometre, and yeah, that was a really good run for me because I've done a lot of great runs in the shoe already and I really was enjoying it, but I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it going on those long distances, and it felt spectacular for it. Like just cruise through that last 10k, everything really in control. That was at the end of a hard training week where I'd done a few sessions in the shoe already, and yeah, I couldn't have enjoyed it more. I really do think it just protects the legs just as well as those heavier carbon super shoes that have a big old stack of bouncy foam, and you think, oh, they're really well designed to be very protective, but I think you're getting a similar level of protection here, really. I mean, it's not quite as cushioned as things like the Cielo, and maybe that will affect some people a bit more and deep into races, but at the end of that run, I felt very fresh, able to run hard for that 10k, no problem at all, and I think it'd be a very good marathon distance shoe. And then the day before, I'd actually gone out and run my parkrun PB in the shoe. I ran a 15:51 at my local parkrun, and that just showcased all the elements of the shoe that impress at the other end of the scale. Like I say, it's nimbleness, it's real speed, it's high turnover when you're really flagging, the lactic's building up at the end of something like a 5k, but you can just keep turning over, getting a nice amount of punch. It's quite easy to engage the plate and get, bounce from it, I find, and that's even as quite a shuffling runner in the sky, which is obviously meant to be designed for these bounding runners, but do think the foam responds really well even if you are starting to shorten your stride length and struggle a bit towards the end of races. I still think you're getting that punch from the shoe that you need to keep holding a fast pace. Earlier that week, I'd done this track session I mentioned, which, like I said, I think is probably the best track session I've ever run, where I was doing 6 1-mile reps at 5:20 per mile with 400 meter float recovery in around 90 seconds. So no real recovery kind of thing. Like you still have to run reasonably hard to get around 400 meters in 90 seconds. And I went through the 10k mark in the in the meat of that session around like 33:40, and then kicked on in the final mile. And that session kind of showcased the other thing I've really noticed and enjoyed about the shoe lately, which is that it does help you lock into a pace and keep rolling. If you're on a nice flat surface like a track, obviously you can just hit a pace, lock in, keep rolling, and it just helps you support that in the way that I've always found with the Nike racing shoes in particular. So I've always loved the Alphafly in particular for a marathon. It feels like you hit a pace, it helps you settle into that and just cruise through it. The Metaspeed Sky Paris does that as well, while also having that nimble feeling if you are on a slightly different style of race where you're going to be accelerating and decelerating more and going around corners. So the half marathon run I did was at the weekend. It was the Brentwood half marathon. We have a race video up, but in general I had a really good run out there. I ran a 70:30 on what is a pretty hilly course, quite a lot of up and down with a nasty long climb right in the last, like in the 12th mile or so. But obviously you get a bit back from the downhills, especially early on in the race, but I think I paced it quite well, judged it quite well. And again, the Metaspeed Sky Paris' qualities were all on display. Like I've talked about all different ones here. You've got that help to control and hold a pace. When you do have those flatter sections, you're just trying to lock in and dial in and hit your race pace. And then you've got enough booming bounce to really take advantage of downhills, whereas maybe you get slightly more on those situations from something like the Alphafly or the Hoka Cielo, where you've got that big old stack and you can really boom your way down a hill. But the Metaspeed still has a lot of propulsion in that situation. And then when you hit the uphills, it's very light, nimble, turn your feet over, get through the hill and move on. And yeah, everything about it really works well and just hits all the points you want from a modern racing shoe. So one concern obviously I had with the shoe, as I've had with all Metaspeed shoes, is the lack of rubber right at the heel. I am a heel striker. This is my right shoe. I'm less of a heel striker on my right foot. I'm probably more heel to midfoot, and I've got kind of no problems at all there. I haven't really ripped up any of the material at the back of the shoe. And actually, it hasn't really happened on the left side yet either, where I do have a more pronounced heel strike. I think it will scuff up over time there, but after 125 kilometers, I've got no real durability concerns about the shoe at all, aside from the fact that this yellow stuff on the side here is flaking off. I'm not going to be too gutted to lose that. So I think you will see a little bit of degradation at the back if you are heel striking in the shoe. I don't think it's a massive problem. Like with the Metaspeed Sky Plus, it happened to me. It never affected performance at all, but with the Sky Paris, it hasn't really happened as much yet, so maybe it's been toughened up very slightly, but yeah, you will still have to look out for that with the shoe. And all in all, a standout run test for me in a year when several very, very impressive carbon shoes have been released. I think the Metaspeed Sky Paris has impressed me most of all.
So then in testing, I've run close to 40 miles in the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. That included some fast marathon training interval sessions, things like efforts that were faster than half marathon pace. I also did a full marathon test where I've mixed 5 miles easy with 10 miles at my target marathon pace, and then the final 16 with whatever I had left on the day, which wasn't a huge amount, I can tell you. Now, the marathon test also took in some light off-road river piles, which I find is always a good test for the durability. It's not necessarily a sensible thing to do, but it does show you if these kind of outsoles cut up and stuff. On the fast interval session, the Metaspeed Sky Paris excelled. Really enjoyed it for that. The stepping comfort is good for a strip back racer. There's no funny business here. It's easy to slip on, to lock down and get moving. And I love the fact that there's a bit of padding in the heel collars here. That's something not all super shoes do. This is great. Definitely boosts the comfort. The flat wrap tongues also sit nicely. And these lace lock laces really kind of work very well to hold the shoe in place. Now I think this has more than a bit of that early Vaporfly feel when you first walk out the door in them. Light, springy, energized. It's like a shoe that's ready to go to work at speed. Once you're moving, it takes a little bit of time, I think, to settle into the ride. I had to learn the shoe a little bit, and moving slow, there's not a huge amount of stability here in this shoe, but once you're punching out fast intervals, this is a shoe that responds really well. The ride is energetic, and that Flight Foam Turbo Plus balances cushioning and spring very nicely. It's snappy, fast returning. It's not too soft and over cushioned. There's a precision here, I think, to the narrower platform that you've got here that makes it more agile than some of the bigger super shoes like the Alpha Flies, New Balance SC Elite 4, the Endorphin Pro 4s, those kind of shoes that are a bit more bulky. I've been testing the Pro 4 a lot recently and they feel quite tame by comparison to these as well. There is a flip side though. Over the marathon distance, if the wheels come off and your form gets ragged, the Sky Paris won't look after you as much as some of those other carbon shoes might. There's enough cushion to avoid any major foot fatigue. They're protective in that sense, but if you're not landing 100% true, they're not going to do you any favours. There's quite a lot of wobble that's, you know, not uncommon in carbon race shoes, but definitely one to watch with this shoe. Now, these shoes will expose kind of tight hips and paw form pretty quickly when you're getting into those deeper miles in a marathon if you're not running quite so well. I tested them mainly in dry conditions and the grip was fine for me. They corner well. I didn't have trouble coming off the midsole platform like I can with some shoes, like I found that with the Adios Pro 3 or the Strung X2. And then when it comes to durability, I can see that the heel rubber on these shoes is worn somewhat already, but having clocked miles on stony ground, there's very little sign of overall scuffing otherwise.
So into that run test, and I've done over 50k in the Metaspeed Sky Paris now, and I haven't raced in this shoe, but what I've tried to do is utilise it in the runs where I'm running at my quickest kilometre during my marathon training. So using it for those longer marathon training runs. Also, I've used it for track sessions as well too, and for the kind of track sessions that I've done, I've also used or taken along with me the Metaspeed Sky Plus to kind of get a sense of how they kind of compare. Now, I'll start with the good here. I think the big thing that I've really noticed here, and I didn't think I really would kind of appreciate, is how light this shoe is. I've always found the weight of the first two shoes very good, but this is significantly lighter, and if you want a racing shoe that just feels like it's going to disappear, then this is a shoe that ultimately does do it. And that's from the kind of upper changes that you're getting here, but generally just Asics kind of managing to kind of shave the weight in other departments without kind of adversely kind of impacting on the experience that you get in this shoe. And then we get into the ride, which I've really liked. You know, I think, you know, retaining what Asics got right in the first two shoes is really important for me. I think they have, and what they've done is they've still given you something that feels really excitable, very enjoyable, very bouncy, very lively when you're running at your quickest. Now, I am a 3 hour 20 kind of marathon runner. I kind of run kind of 40-ish, kind of 10k, kind of 130, just below in terms of half marathons, so that give you an idea of my pace. And when I've run at my quickest, I found that this has been the most enjoyable shoe to run in. And I think all the qualities of the previous two shoes are there, but it's that the thing that I've noticed difference in the ride has been that softer edge you get, particularly at the forefoot here, which I think is making it for me a better shoe to run longer in. Where I've run marathons in the previous two shoes, maybe that kind of slightly firmer feel has been not necessarily an issue for me, but maybe something that I've needed to kind of soften up a little bit. I think you do get that here in the shoe. I think probably it's going to make it a little bit more accommodating for people as well, which I think is really important. What I've really found in the previous two shoes, I didn't absolutely love it shorter distances. Now in the track sessions that I did with the shoe, I definitely don't think it's lost any of that explosiveness at that shorter distances. I do think, the changes for me make it feel a little bit more comfortable to run shorter in. I didn't love racing shorter distances in the previous two shoes. I do feel like this feels a lot nicer. I threw on the Metaspeed Sky Plus for one session, and I do think that in comparison, you do notice that firmer feel. I think the weight difference is, it hasn't been a major impact for me or major issue for me, but I do think that definitely that softer feel that you're getting here in the shoe in general doesn't mean it loses that kind of faster kind of aspect to it. I think the ride is still as lively as it was before. It just feels that maybe you're going to get something a little bit more accommodating in general. And the other thing for me is the outsole durability. I think that was a big question mark over the previous two shoes, really kind of saving it for those race days or race day scenarios. What I'm seeing so far after 50k, the gripping and outsole side of things, not a massive amount here in terms of what you're getting the outsole, but the gripping has been very good. But it's that protection or the outsole kind of durability at the heel, which I wanted to see. And I'm not seeing the same level of wear that I did see with the previous two shoes. So potential there that it's going to be a better shoe from a durability point of view, and that you're going to maybe be able to use it for training sessions, maybe a little bit, but really still want to reserve it for that kind of race day when you are going to run at your fastest. So yeah, generally very much positives here with me and the kind of experience I've had with the Metaspeed Sky Paris. I do feel like it is a better shoe to run quicker in. I do feel it's a more accommodating shoe to run longer in and run quicker over that marathon distance as well. So definitely lots of positives here for me. And it looks like Asics has tried to address some key things that I think were maybe holding back the other two shoes or the previous shoes, or maybe were different criticisms of those first two Metaspeed shoes.
So for me, the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris is the best racing shoe on the market for me right now. It's the one I'd be recommending very easily to people, with a tip of the hat to the Metaspeed Edge Paris, which we haven't tested yet. We'll have a look at as soon as we can, but it's hard to believe that a similar Asics shoe could improve on the performance of this, but I certainly look forward to giving it a try. It just does everything you want from a racing shoe for every distance. It feels great for short reps, fast reps, turning your feet over, really lightweight, and then has that bounce, control, and propulsion you want for longer events. Really does tick every single box. So when I tested the Alphafly 3 at the back end of last year and the start of this year, I really almost thought that the carbon plate shoe market was sewn up for the coming year, because that was such an amazing shoe, and it still is an amazing shoe. And I'm going to go and use it actually later today. I'm going to work on a Sky Paris versus Alphafly 3 comparison video where I try and give my thoughts, but I do think they are both amazing shoes, pretty much equally good in terms of things like the marathon. But I think with the Metaspeed Sky Paris, you do have that lightness, that edge on lightness. The Alphafly 3 probably is a slightly more bouncy, propulsive ride. Maybe that'll be a bit more cushioned later on in the marathon. Hard to tell those things till you run a marathon hard. I think it's really important to do your marathon at a hard pace to really unlock the feeling of what it's going to be like at the end of the marathon. That is another excellent shoe. I'd have no qualms recommending that shoe as well. They're probably pretty much equally good all round, but I do prefer the Metaspeed Sky Paris myself, just because it has that lighter feel, and it's also a bit cheaper, which when you're dealing with shoes that I think are very similar in terms of performance, the price of the shoe is actually a factor in the carbon shoe market. It's not cheap by any means, but it is at the lower end of the scale for carbon plate super shoes. So yeah, that's the big one to look out for. I think the Alphafly 3 versus the Metaspeed Sky Paris. I've run over 100k in both, and at the moment I'm leaning towards the Metaspeed Sky Paris, but another workout on the Alphafly today. We'll have a comparison video up, but at the moment this is my shoe for the London Marathon, the Asics, because I love running it, and every single run I've done in it has just made me like it more. Another big favourite for me this year has been the Hoka CLO X1, which is a different kind of super shoe. Like, it's a lot heavier than the Metaspeed Sky Paris, and it's a lot springier and bouncier, and it's incredible fun to run in. And I think the weight is always going to be a factor in people's minds, but it is an incredibly fun shoe to run in. Great marathon option, really bouncy. I think despite the fact it is so bouncy and big, it is quite a stable shoe, and probably quite a friendly shoe to lots of runners who will really enjoy running in it. But I think when it comes to the business end of racing, I would prefer the Metaspeed Sky Paris myself, for that lighter shoe with a nice bouncy feel, but also with that really rapid turnover and slightly more aggressive edge to it than the CLO has. And that weight's always going to stick in your mind a bit when you are heading towards the final few miles of a marathon. Do you want a shoe that is 60 grams odd heavier than this on your foot? It does actually remind me of the Nike Vaporfly 3 quite a lot, and I do love the Vaporfly 3. And the shoe has kind of been forgotten a little bit because it came out last year, but that is another super light shoe with a very impressive ride that is comfortable enough for full marathons, but also, lightweight and nippy enough for the short stuff. Some people feel like the Vaporfly 3 lost a bit of its edge in terms of aggression. I think it just got a little bit softer. I still think it's just as impressive and aggressive as before, but I think if you want maybe the slightly firmer feel under the forefoot that the Vaporfly had before, I think the Metaspeed Sky Paris is actually quite a similar shoe in lots of ways, but has a slightly firmer feel and maybe a more direct feel that people might be seeking. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two shoes. Again, I just slightly prefer the way the Metaspeed Sky Paris has performed for me and feels for me. Both great shoes, you won't go wrong with either. And if you see the Vaporfly 3 in a massive sale, then I wouldn't hesitate to grab that. But again, I just slightly prefer the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris just for the way it's felt on the run for me. I mean, we could go on. There's loads of amazing shoes out there. I think I've talked through probably what I think are my top tier of carbon racing shoes, and I do put the Metaspeed Sky Paris at the top of that tier for now. For me, but I think when you're dealing with these shoes that are all very similar and impressive in terms of the level of performance they offer, a lot of it will come down to personal taste, what you like in the terms of the feel of the ride. Always is the Edge Paris to test as well, which will be very interesting. But I think if you go for any of those shoes, you can't really go wrong. But really, throughout my run test, I found that the Metaspeed Sky Paris has no faults at all. Very happy to recommend it as a very good racing shoe. It's the one I'd buy and stick in my rotation now as my racing shoe, just because it offers so much at a pretty reasonable price for a carbon shoe.
So my verdicts on the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris are that although I haven't raced in this shoe, I absolutely would have no hesitation racing this shoe. If I had a 5K tomorrow, if I had a half marathon, a full marathon, I think that, I've absolutely loved running in the first two. I think, massive changes weren't needed, but I think the changes that have been made have just made it a more accomplished racing shoe across distances. I think that comes down to the fact that you're getting something lighter, which I think makes it a nicer shoe for those kind of shorter distances. I think over the kind of longer distances, I think that the softer edge that you're getting from this midsole definitely lends itself to being more comfortable to run longer in, but still maintaining that kind of feel, that lively feel that you've got from the previous two shoes and the bounce that you're getting as well. And then also getting that kind of, I think, potentially boosting outsole durability as well. It's an expensive shoe, just like the previous two shoes, but I think you get what you pay for ultimately in terms of my experience with the Metaspeed Sky Paris. Probably reminds me most of something like the Vaporfly 3, which I think probably is a little bit better at those shorter distances for me, but I think in terms of going longer, in this shoe, I think I would feel more comfortable doing it in this shoe while you're still getting that kind of nice light kind of general feel as well. So I think absolutely if you're looking for a marathon racing shoe, also something that for shorter distances, then absolutely I think this is a fantastic option, a standout option. And it proves that from someone like me who's run and raced a lot in the previous two shoes and was wary about the changes that Asics were going to make with this shoe, I definitely think the changes here overall are for the positive. And I think this is if you are looking for a racing shoe, absolutely, I would absolutely recommend this.
Verdict then, and I've really enjoyed the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. It has all the ingredients I think you look for in a good carbon race shoe at a pretty competitive price overall. It's in there with kind of quite a few of the other shoes in terms of its pricing. It's light, it's racy, it's got airy uppers, it's got this big stack of bouncy midsole foam and a stiffness from the carbon plate that adds some extra pop. For me, it's definitely a livelier step on from the Metaspeed Sky Plus, which was a good shoe, but perhaps not the snappiest of carbon shoes. This really, I think, injects a little bit more. It feels a bit more aggressive. I like the stiffness in the midsole unit, along with the just right cushioning that I find dampens road impact without leaving you feeling completely disconnected from the road. In some ways, it reminds me of the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, in as much as you're not sure if it's a risk heading into a marathon distance. If you get heavy, it might hang you out to dry, but it handled the 26.2 test that I did very well. And if you're confident you're in good racing shape, I'd certainly say this is a marathon race shoe contender for you. I'd choose it above the Vaporfly Next Percent 3, definitely above shoes like the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4, unless you want a more reliable kind of overall comfort. For me, the Asics has made its best carbon plate shoe yet here, and it's right up there among the best options for chasing fast times for everything up to the marathon, but maybe with a half marathon sweet spot.
That's it. That's our review of the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.